yourself a lawmaker and you're not a law abider, you let me know what other job you can get up from, walk off with no notice, and think you're going to have that job when you come back. The people of Michigan deserve better. I don't know if this is a preview of what's to come, but as a lawmaker, as a person who comes and does what I'm supposed to do, it's insulting to everybody else. And those that go along to get along, shame on them too.
Yo, what's up, guys? That was State Representative Tyrone Carter waxing eloquent about the job ethics of the State House and Senate and how dare these Republicans refuse to come in for their lame duck session while his colleague Betty Scott is not Betty Scott, Helena Scott is asleep at the desk behind him. Hey guys, we got a special guest tonight. We have Senator Jonathan Lindsey, who was at the lame duck session himself, being a senator, and he's got a lot of stories to tell us. We've got some fun clips to show you too. And joining us again in front of the show, Matt Wilk from Wayne County, who's also is Insight is, of course, always welcomed here. How is everybody doing? It's going to be a calm, peaceful Christmas show tonight. Time of celebration and cheer, because my God, lame duck could not have possibly gone any better. And I say that. Obviously, they passed a lot of bad bills. We'll have to address that when the time comes. But overall, we could not have asked for any kind of better result. So, how you guys doing this lovely Sunday evening?
Well, I want to know if Senator Lindsey, do you have like a recovery day after you pull an all-nighter for an exam? Do you all get together and like go to the bar like it was for law school? How does it work after you pull off whatever was 30 hours in a row?
We probably should have done something like that. Yeah, good evening, you guys. Thanks, Adam, for having me on. We should have done something like that. I don't think we did. It was funny. It was a weird time. We finished by the time we left Lansing, it was 3 or 4 in the afternoon after doing an all-nighter. So it's that awkward space where you actually really want to stay awake, right? So I had already scheduled to go drive down to one of my retiring sheriff's event and give a tribute. So that was my next stop. I went there, and then.
Hey, Jonathan, your video is frozen for just a moment there. Hopefully, we'll have you back on in a sec. Shoot. Well, we've lost him for the moment, but I think his internet's kind of coming and going. There you are. Jonathan, you're back. I'm sorry, we just missed you for a few seconds there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a connection issue tonight, but
those happen to me.
But we did recover. To Matt's question, we recovered.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We have got a lot to go over with the 30-hour Senate saga. But first, I think we do need to set the table, because before all of these crazy things happen in the Senate, a lot of crazy things happen in the House first. So for those who hadn't heard, let's kind of go over the scenario here. So as we knew, like about a week, since our last stream a week ago, our last Sunday night live stream, the Democrats were set up to pass everything that they wanted to do with the expectation that they're going to have all the votes they needed to it, or if they lost one vote here or there, they could either A, get a Republican to go along with it and therefore pass it anyhow, or B, fine, so what, move on to the next thing. We don't get 100% all the time, but we'll put hundreds of bills on the agenda. And in fact, you have this. Let me see if I can find this image right now, which unfortunately I did not prepare that I should have. With this, it's funny because as all this happened, it's confluent with what happened in Washington, where House Speaker Mike Johnson was planning to rush through this 1,500-page omnibus spending bill, and then there was a complete and total revolt among the House Republican caucus, and then they couldn't pass that, and so there was this. Eventually, they come back with this still pretty bad, but not nearly as bad 100-page bill, and Vivek Ramaswamy posts this comparison photo of Bill A, 1,500 pages of garbage, versus Bill B, which was only 100 pages of garbage. And then, so you had posted kind of a similar comparison. I got to find this here. Sorry for the delay, folks. And I'm trying to talk through the period as I find it.
Well,
it was this giant, 3-foot high stack of paperwork. That was what the Democrats wanted to do. And they got barely even a fraction of it through. Let me see if we can find it.
Wasn't that
Here
your
we go.
picture? That was your picture, Jonathan, wasn't it?
Yeah, Adam's so right. It was the parallel. We were watching what was happening in Lansing and cutting out the CR that was not a CR. It was a bunch of new spending, and so it was like after we had finished this marathon session, I went to my staff and I'm like, guys, we're not done yet. We're creating that photo, and we're going to do it with. And it was hard because we had to look through all of the bills that were up in front of the House and the Senate that were eligible, that were second chamber bills that could have gone through. And then for all of I know as conservatives we are the ones that are actually environmentally conscious. So I do want people to know that what we did with the page count, and then we just put one printed page on top. Those are not all printed bills, and all that paper will be used again for something else. But we counted the pages, and then we made the comparison. And it was totally inspired by the work that was being done federally to compare. On the left, as you showed that picture, that's everything that they could have rammed through. And there's a couple of things in there, frankly, we'd be better if we could have got them through. Very few, by the way, very few. But most of them were really bad pieces of legislation that would have hurt the state and set us back. So you see on the right is what they actually got through that's eligible, but it's not even through yet. We've got to see if the governor signs them.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that because apart from all the things the House and Senate wanted, there was a few things the governor, Gretchen, actually wanted, and I believe she got none of them. So, there might be some spite vetoes coming in the next few weeks. So we shall see because, she's certainly been able to use them against Republicans. Wants to show what a strong, powerful woman she is.
It's important to point out, where was she this weekend?
Oh, she was in California, wasn't she?
She was in California. She was in California. Very important. I think you people who've been around it long enough are like, man, this is Granholm 2.0. Maybe it really is Granholm 2.0. And she's looking for her next job as a college professor or something.
Oh yeah. All right. Anyway, before we get to the epic conclusion of all of this, let's first start with kind of where it's all got set off. So we're on, I think it was last Wednesday, which feels like an age ago. But the House is having their marathon. No, it was Thursday. Anyway, the House is having their marathon session, and it's really, really late. And they've already passed like 100 some bills. Maybe not 100. I can go back and count. We can look. All this is now at rescuemichigan.com under Operation Watchdog. You can actually see every single roll call vote has now been logged. Every single bill is in there. It is completely 100% up to date with every single thing that happened and didn't happen in the past few days. But anyway, so at some strange point, I don't know what it was because the bill was completely innocuous. Karen Whitsett just seemed to decide she's had enough. And they have, in the House, they leave the board open for kind of an indefinite period. And usually what will happen is one of two things will happen. Either they'll start to say, members, you may still vote at your desks, and then they'll start to beat the table, and they'll start to, if they don't have the votes yet, they'll really start to get people to hit that yes button and get the voting done with. Or they will just cancel the vote altogether. They won't put in the journal that a vote failed. That is extraordinarily rare. But this Thursday evening, there's one Democrat vote missing on some bill. It's Karen Whitsett. The Republicans are all, by the way, gone. This is the day the Republicans launched their strike. And I'll talk more about how awesome that was in a second. But anyway, the Republicans are all gone. And so one Democrat, Karen Whitsett, has not voted. And they say the clerk will close the board. And they announced the bill has failed. I don't even remember what the bill was. It was so unimportant. And that was when the House adjourns for the day. And while this is happening, we then start hearing news. This is now, I think we're on Friday in the States. And correct me if I'm wrong on the dates. Because the first thing I remember was that the next day, Karen Whitsett still hadn't checked in at her desk, even though there was talk. Now she said, I will come. No, here's what I think happened. Now I'm trying to make sure I got my dates right here. All the things I just described was Wednesday. Thursday, Karen Whitsett's not there. As, by the way, are also two other Democrats that never check in, interestingly. One of them is Abraham Ayash, the majority floor leader from Hamtramck. The other is Alabas Farhat from Dearborn. Anyway, the Republicans are maintaining their strike. And so the board is open for the roll call for attendance for a couple hours, or maybe it was 3 or 4, and they don't have a quorum, so they just call it a day, and that's it. And now it's when, of course, all the stories start to come out with Karen Whitsett. The other thing is, at the same time, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, this was the same day Sylvia Santana didn't come in, isn't that right?
It was Wednesday of this past week, and I think, following along what you're saying, I think you got it all right. I'll just go back and fill in just a couple more things.
Yeah.
The Friday, not this past Friday, but a week ago Friday, the thing that was so critical about that day in the House is that at the end of that week, under Adam's dealt with this a lot, Matt, you know it, a lot of your listeners may not, but under the Michigan Constitution, you have to have bills lay over 5 days between chambers. And so what happens is, given our session calendar, everybody expected that Friday, a week ago Friday, to be the last opportunity to get a bill out of the first chamber, right? So what's happening on the Democrat side, the Republicans have left Lansing, and they didn't just leave. Matt Hall, Speaker-elect, came out to the Democrats and said, this day is effectively our last opportunity to solve the crisis that's looming for our tipped wage workers and for all of our businesses in Michigan that are going to be saddled with this new paid.
I think we lost it for a second, but you're just saying paid sick leave. So yeah, I can continue where. Okay, go ahead, Senator. You're back, I think.
Yep.
You're just saying the last day they can get done the paid sick leave and the tip credit.
Right. And so that was the start of all of it. Was Speaker-elect Matt Hall correctly was saying to them, this is our last opportunity, and this is the biggest issue facing the people. We had thousands of tipped wage workers in the Capitol, the week prior. And so on Friday, he says to Speaker Tate, if you won't come in and pass a bill, even if it's not exactly the right one, but something that could keep this issue alive, send it over to the Senate, then we're not going to show up and work on anything else. That's what matters to the people of Michigan. So Republicans leave. At that point, the Democrats were in a really tough spot because their caucus was already imploding on itself. You have a lot of different individual priorities, and they were all looking at it saying, we haven't had an opportunity to get our pet project done. And so they were all fighting over, this is our last opportunity to pass a bill out of the House and send it over to the Senate. And that's what caused it to be, they were there for, 10 or 12 hours before Whitsett pulled the plug and left. But during that time, they were actually quite inefficient because they were fighting over who gets to get a bill through and have an opportunity to see that actually become law. But then you were right, just carrying on from there, is that going into the next week, which was this past week, we had, I don't want to say any of them wrong, and the days kind of ran together, but effectively on the House side, they were able to shut down any legislation happening because Karen Whitsett did not come and give the Democrats quorum. On our side, we had Senator Sylvia Santana on one day. She did not show up, so they did not have the ability to pass any bills in the Senate either. And then Thursday, they did have full membership in the Senate. That's when they kicked off session at 10 a.m., and I'm sure we'll go through all of it. But that's the one that lasted for almost 30 hours into Friday.
Right. Okay. So before we get to Sylvia Santana, I do also want to back up a little bit and talk about what this agenda item was that Matt Hall was negotiating. Because one of the things that I mentioned in my email blast, and I got some flack for it actually from people who are saying, because I made the point that the concern is the Republicans have now launched this strike, which is going to be enormously beneficial for us in a lot of ways. Number one, the Democrats now have to have absolute unanimity to pass anything. Number two, whatever they do pass, now they will be forced to say it was partisan. Everything they do from here out is going to be partisan. Politically, very bad look for the Democrats. And we're talking hundreds of bills here. Now, as for the tip credit and for the paid sick leave, the backstory to this is that in 2018, these left-wing organizations got the signatures for what's called a citizen-initiated law, where what they do is they write the language, and they put in this language that says the minimum wage is going to go up and up and up and up, which I say minimum wage, but that's a misleading word. The actual minimum wage is $0. The minimum wage, what they call it, is the price at which below that it's illegal to hire somebody. And therefore, you are mandating unemployment because now the supply and demand curves below that threshold just get chopped off. And so workers get fired. All these terrible things happen. And it's especially bad for servers because the language that they put in was also to say that they don't get this, what's called the tip credit, which means that if you're paid with the expectation you get paid tips, you don't have the minimum wage. You can pay a server $2 an hour because they're going to make 20 in tips, right? So once they got the signatures to put this thing through, what happens is the legislature has a choice. They can either pass a bill that is somehow going to satisfy the requirements of the signatures, or it gets put on the ballot. So the Chamber of Commerce and the Michigan Restaurant Association come to the Republicans. And I remember because I was there at the time, and they said, here's the deal, guys. This cannot go to the ballot because we will lose. We know this just happened in Colorado. John Elway ran a $5 million ad campaign against this exact thing, and we got clobbered. People don't understand economics. So what we need you guys to do is to pass a law that does as little as possibly it can do to honor the requirements of the signatures. And so they're like, okay, well, we'll still raise the minimum wage, but let's remove the tip credit, for example, was I think part of it. And then the state Supreme Court came back and just said, actually, that wasn't good enough. So try again. So they had to pass.
In particular, the concept is called adopt and amend, in which it has to happen within the same House period, right? So periods of 2 years. If the initiative comes through, you're required to adopt it or put it up for a vote, which no one wanted that to happen. So they adopted it, and then within the same period, they amended it. Okay, so adopt and amend was something that the left went crazy and said you can't do that. So it was forced upon everybody. But the point of why we needed to adopt and amend in the first place is this citizen initiative was so crazy that I think the number that was being reported was 60,000 tip workers would be at risk of losing their jobs if all of a sudden their base pay went from $3 an hour or whatever the tip wage minimum is, 3 or 4, to 15.
20.
And
Eventually 20.
a lot of
people, up.
Right, and you would ultimately, as a business owner, you'd do what some restaurants out west already have now, which is a kiosk that you don't even talk to a server. You just order on a kiosk, and a runner runs it out there, and these people will lose their jobs. And 100%. Now, the other thing to talk about that you mentioned is we as Republicans talk about something called regular order a lot. Like we want to have conversations. And I don't know, Senator, who it was that got yelled down by my idiotic Senator, Dana Paul-Hankey, but they weren't even holding hearings. They would open a hearing. They would take a discharge motion. They would talk to nobody, get no conversation, because they had to accomplish this on all these thousands of bills. And somebody, I don't know who it was, asked a simple question. And she went ballistic. We're not going to have a discussion, blah, blah, blah. You're out of order, bang, bang, bang. And that was the only method they had. So the other thing that was working on at this point is the clock, right? And I don't know for sure, but what I think happened, Adam, the bill that was the trigger bill, her first bill where she set out, was actually tipping fees, 5333, where she just said, I'm not doing it, because what she had asked was, will you move me to the front of the line, my pet project to the front of the line? Now, understanding that where she's from is where Joe Tate's from. They cover the same area, basically. And this had to do with Detroit Public Schools getting some windfall number, $400 million, about paying off old debts from DPS, not for DPS CD. But you look at that one, failed 55-0. So that's the one they didn't pull down. It's 5333. And she said, if you will not tell me that my concerns are going to be next, I'm not, because I'm sure they told her, oh, you're coming right up. You're coming right up. You're coming right up. And she said, that's it. I'm gone. I'm leaving after enduring 10 hours of this garbage. And you can only hide at people so long. And she went back home. And she got a fair amount of support because she's like, look, I want my thing. And then when she came back, she brought Sherry Gay Degnago. I can't remember how to pronounce her name.
Sherry Gay Dagnogo. Yeah, so Sherry Gay Dagnogo, she used to be a state rep. Very toxic, like loved to scream and yell and race bait all the time. And I forget the details of it because she was supposed to become, she was on track to become a state senator, and somehow leadership screwed her out of the deal. I forget exactly how that went down.
It
But
was the redistricting. It was the redistricting that screwed her out of it because they had when they split those seats, they had fewer Detroit-centric Senate seats, and they screwed her out of a
I feel
position.
like there was something else too. I think there was some other thing that involved like someone was supposed to step aside and then didn't or something. Because I remember hearing the gossip about it. I don't remember what it was, but
yeah.
Anyway,
so
good.
it was and so people need to understand they were circumventing every single rule, right? We're not going to have committee hearings. We're not going to allow questions. Now we'll get to it. The rule in the Senate that Senator Lindsey and Ruth Johnson, a lot of people took advantage of, I think is special. It's Christmas time, so a nice historical movie like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I think fits in very nicely.
Yeah. So anyway, so Matt Hall now has given this list of demands to them to come back, and my attitude is, I don't want you to come back. You've given them a thing where they could just say, oh, come back. We'll do that. Sure, you want us to fix the roads, whatever that means. That's another thing that Matt Hall had thrown in. We need a plan to fix the roads. Well, the Democrats had some plans to fix the roads. Create toll roads. Raise the gas taxes. I don't want to see those things. So I'm like, don't give them an out. So I'm sending out these email blasts saying, no. Tell them, hold the line. Don't come in. Stay home. And then meanwhile, in the House, now Karen Whitsett has said she's had enough. And also, by the way, well, I'll talk about Ayash and Farhat in a second. But anyway, but then the other thing was, then Attorney General Dana Nessel comes out and decides to post a tweet claiming that it is a crime and they could be prosecuted for not showing up to work, which is, first off, hilarious coming from Dana Nessel, because if we're going to say that willful neglect of duty is an enforceable criminal act, she's got some things to answer for herself. Like, she was the one who said after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, I'm just going to refuse to enforce Michigan's abortion law. Now, there is a concept called prosecutorial discretion, which says that a prosecutor can just come with any reason not to prosecute somebody, including like, I've got too many other things to work on. It's not really an actionable thing, except that she came out and just said it. I'm going to refuse to prosecute anyone under this law that's now in effect. But anyway, but that's the whole thing. This is all just patently absurd. There's separation of powers issues. You don't want the executive branch throwing members of the legislature in jail. That's a very bad look, especially when one of them's from your own party, But what it came down to was Whitsett, who I don't think really had much of an objection to these other Democrat bills. I mean, Whitsett voted with the Democrats 100% of the time. I actually know this because on Operation Watchdog, we have this handy partisan ranking page that illustrates just the degree of unanimity among Democrats. And you can see almost all of them vote with their party over 95% of the time. Dylan Wegelow was the only exception at only 88.5%. But Karen Whitsett was actually one of the few who was at 100. She voted with the Democrat majority every single time.
Loyal soldier. And what does he get?
Soldier who just had enough of being walked on, because what they do is they the people that are holdouts are the ones they treat with respect. The ones who just give you their votes every time are the ones they want to walk all over, So Whitsett had enough.
Adam, can I just add one thing? You were talking about the Attorney General goes out there and suggests that these people who are not there are breaking the law. And one of the best tweets I've seen, at least in the last year, was State Senator Sylvia Santana, Democrat Senator, Black woman, who was also one of them who was not at work. And she responds to the Attorney General, and I've got it here. She says, it would have to be a progressive, tough on crime Attorney General to call 2 Black women criminals for taking a principled stand on behalf of Black people. It was the most fire I have seen in a long time.
Yeah. I'm trying to find that tweet now, but anyway, yeah. So that tweet made Sylvia Santana and, of course, the Republicans also, but especially Karen Whitsett, even more angry, because the Democrats' response to "I'm not going to be bullied anymore" is to try bullying even harder. And so then, and by the way, we'll get to Santana in a second, but the next thing now is Whitsett apparently negotiates a deal with Joe Tate, that the Speaker of the House, the Democrat Speaker of the House, that she will come into Lansing the next day. This is, I want to say Thursday, but maybe it was Friday. I think it was Thursday. I will come in on Thursday, provided you do not execute a maneuver called the Call of the House, which is a procedural maneuver where they literally put the House sergeants at arms suddenly become like actual sergeants at arms and will put you in your seat. And if you are not in the chamber, they will find you and come get you. Literally anywhere in the state. In fact, when in Wisconsin, they were the Democrats were trying to stop right to work in Wisconsin. They literally fled to Illinois. They fled the state to try to evade the call of the House. So Whitsett has said, I'll come in if you promise me you won't issue a call of the House. The next day around lunchtime, she's in Speaker-elect Matt Hall's office talking about who knows what. I'm sure that was a very interesting conversation when they issue, of course, the call of the House. And suddenly they're going to drag all of these Democrats in.
And what did Matt do?
About 10 minutes. Oh, yeah. Oh, so by the way, yeah. So Matt says, I ain't coming, which
he shuts his door and locks his door.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you, an old buddy of mine was a lawmaker like 20 years ago, and he says a call of the House apparently does not mean what it used to mean. Because it used to mean that would be the call for the House sergeants to batter down the door and drag you in. They would not take any guff. The call of the House was a very, very, very serious act, and they enforced it to the T. However, it surely did not escape the knowing of the sergeants that Matt Hall was soon to be their boss. that was probably a very bad idea to try to enforce the call of the House there. So after that, there's actually, it's funny in the journal, in the House Journal, I don't have it handy, but it says, and then Joe Tate issued the call of the House, and then it says Representative Hertzberg takes his seat. It was like, the freshman Democrat that got elected in the special election. No Republicans came in. By the way, I actually got a bit of a scare the night before. There were multiple people were contacting me saying that Representative Dale Zorn was going to come in. He was going to Lansing, supposedly just to clean out his desk, and everyone's like, he's going to cut a deal, isn't he? He's going to cut a deal. He's got this hearing aid bill he's obsessed with. He's going to cut a deal. And so we thought about like doing like an APB action alert, call Dale Zorn's office, tell him to stay home, da 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 da. And fortunately, he didn't come in. He didn't come into the call of the House. Although apparently when the call of the House came up, my sources have said that he was sending out texts saying, they're going to arrest me. Hope you can post my bond. As if like they're going to take him to jail. Or maybe because he thought Dana Nessel would arrest him or something. He was literally afraid of being arrested.
I don't know if you saw the video of it, but I mean, no, the Sergeant at Arms is an elderly gentleman, and he basically went over and like knocked on the door. And when, of course, Matt Hall doesn't answer the door, he just kind of shrugs his shoulders and walks away. Like, what do you want me to do about it? And
there's several of them, but none of them are particularly fearsome looking, let's just say.
No.
But anyway, so then about 10 minutes later, the House adjourns until December 31st. That's the end of it. That's the end of it, folks. And here's the thing. Besides now, all of the bills the Senate's passed up to this point that haven't passed the House now being dead, the other thing now is, as Democrats, I'm sure the senators want to pass as much as they possibly can. But as senators, they don't like the fact that now their bills are all dead while they're going to have to pass a bunch of House bills, right? Because there's like this give and take, We pass some of your bills, you pass some of our bills, and it's all kumbaya. But now these hundreds of Senate bills, almost 1,000 of them, it's into the House, and they're all dead for the year. By the way, before we go further, because here's the thing, the House adjourned until December 31st at 1:30 p.m., right during the bowl game. And the Senate finally adjourned until December 30th. So, but everyone's saying they're done for the year. But what do you think, Senator? Are they? I mean, obviously we're going to act as though we have to be sure, just in case. But do you think there's going to be any funny business on the 30th and 31st, or are we done?
Well, if there's funny business, I don't know if it'll be those days. I think there's a very high likelihood we actually are, in fact, done for the year. I know if you are on Twitter now and you watch some of the House Dems and even some of the senators, there's an active push right now to say, under Michigan law and under the joint rules, the speaker and the majority leader can call a special emergency session, even when we're in this period where we've adjourned all the way to a date certain in the future.
Yeah.
And you've got people out there, Betsy Kofia, saying, Jen Hill and I will drive down, we'll finish the business. I mean, we've all got to stay ready. And, but I think, the conventional wisdom is that it is done. And I hope that remains true.
Yeah, I think probably we're going to do an alert just to have people contact their lawmakers, right before the 30th, just in case. But I've seen like the NAACP put out a thing saying, invoke Rule 15 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure people like Betsy Kofia know that it's not, they're grandstanding for, so they can tell their constituents, look at me, I fought for more of a lame duck and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think they're very serious about that. Certainly not going to interfere with Christmas. But they might try. The problem is bullying already failed them once. Like, that's the reason why it all fell apart in the House, is because they're bullying too hard. So the other two, by the way, so then there's who didn't check in at their desks Wednesday or Thursday. One of them is Majority House Floor Leader Abraham Ayash from Hamtramck. Now, he announced he is not running for re-election. He didn't seek re-election. Rumor is he's going to run for state senate. In fact, apparently he's hired a videographer to like film him on the House floor doing his lawmaking thing. So he's clearly got some game in the works for that. But then Albas Farhat, his district is Dearborn, which Dearborn is bleeding Democrat support this year. It was a complete disaster for them with everything that Joe Biden has done in the Middle East. But also a lot of things the Democrats did too. Like they passed this bill. There was a lot of very nasty bills against convenience store owners and gas station owners. The bill to impose licensure on nicotine sales. The bill to ban flavored vaping that they're trying to get through. All these things, and these business owners are like, "This is BS." And I think there's a reason why he never checked in on Wednesday or Thursday. I don't think he was going to be as assertive as Karen Whitsett, but he might have been a backup, maybe.
The school stuff was insanely crazy. That goes over. It is nonpartisan as far as the people of Dearborn are concerned. It is insanely crazy what you read, what they would do. You couldn't object to a book except under certain conditions. You were kept in the dark, and it was just it was insane. And those kind of things. And the tough part, the part that Joe Tate could not manage, is he couldn't manage his middle or his different constituencies. So you had the Betsy Koffias of the world and the Emily Devendorfs and Jason Morgan and Noah Arbit. They all want that LGBTQ stuff. That's more important to them than, I don't know, 60,000 tipped wage workers. And you got to balance those things out. Now, the one that I want to understand, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from somebody else, maybe Senator Lindsey, is you had all year to do this, any of these things. Why didn't you? Why didn't they do that? What's your supposition as to that?
I think it's a couple things. I mean, I think that last year they were more productive legislatively, and it had a large degree to do with Governor Whitmer was running the show from top to bottom. And say what you want about her, but she came in and said, "This is what you're going to do." Boom, boom, boom. And she kind of disappeared from Michigan in a lot of ways. I mean, she's a lot of abandoned the state. You look at her travel patterns this year, what she's been doing. So I think they had a lack of leadership in both chambers. The Senate had a little bit more unity and got together, but just poor decisions by the leadership and the Democrats on the House side, not managing their caucus and saying, what are you're always going to have different factions and different priorities, but to go for, Adam, you probably got the numbers in front of you, like one session day from, like June to November or whatever. Yes. So all of these people who are out there who have, and you can actually satisfy both, I believe, Matt. I think you can bring some of the progressive, social stuff forward. You can bring other things that matter to people if their economics in their districts are hurting. They did none of that. They didn't, hold the enough days to bring legislation forward. They did a weird one that I heard about. I wish I could remember the bill, where Jen Hill had been fighting for something. She represents a district in the UP, the only Democrat they had up there. And she had an issue that she'd been trying to bring forward for months and months and months. As I understand it, it never came up until after she lost her election, and they finally brought it up in lame duck. Like, thanks, you lost your seat. This could have been something that could have been messaging points for her with her constituents. But they did an extremely poor job on the Democrat side of managing the House caucus in particular, and focusing on getting anything done that they could even talk about.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too was just the idea was hide everything from voters. I mean, there's a big difference between election year 2024 and the legislative season, in which when they assume the next election is safely far enough in the distance that voters aren't going to remember, the right to work repeal and things like that. So, I mean, they didn't even introduce like a bill to make it almost impossible to remove child pornography from public libraries until after the election, because they didn't want voters to be able to point to that kind of crap. Another bill that, by the way, died. The best thing is about this, by the way, is that all these dead bills, they also got one vote in the chamber. So now, like, the gun rights groups can say every single Democrat senator voted to create a blacklist of who's not allowed to buy a firearm. Like, that's on the record. Every single House Democrat voted to put kiddie porn, disgusting transgender propaganda pornography in public libraries. They've now all owned all of those things they've done. They don't get the law, they don't get the PA, but they still are on the record in at least one chamber, and it's always unanimous, and it's hilarious. So anyway,
and they've got some people that are still running. Remember that I think the total is either 8 or 13 something Senate districts got redistricted. So because of the city of Detroit, so the case came out, they clearly racially gerrymandered, and they were caught doing it. They forced them to redo the maps. In the Senate, you could not. You had to redo a larger number, kind of all throughout Southeast Michigan. And the court said, "Okay, this is when are you going to hold new elections?" And the left screamed, "No, we can't do. They can't do that. We'll just make it effective as of the 26th election." And somehow the judge bought that. It was ridiculous. And then, so now you're looking at people who are maybe crossing paths. They're sharing locations. They don't know where they're going. You have people who are termed out, but they're waking up and they're like, I got to take this vote on the road. And those are some, you're right, Dan, those are some bad votes to take.
Yeah. And the House Republicans had a great time going to local businesses and talking to people. And they're all saying, like, no one's mad that we're not there. they're glad they're not there. Right. Anyway, so in the House, they're now done. And then you guys in the Senate, Senator, had this 30-hour marathon session, which I had, well, I don't know if I'd call it a pleasure to watch, but there were some moments, all right. There were some moments, and I think it was it you that kicked it all off? I think it was, because I was watching the video, and you're talking about this bill. Remind me what it was, but it was a bill that was going to be a new act.
Yeah, peer-to-peer car sharing.
That's right, peer-to-peer car sharing. And just like, now this is a new law that we haven't had time to read, so I think maybe we should really go through this. And you're starting with the definition section. I'm like, is this I actually posted on X, like, is this a sort of a filibuster? And then the Great Lakes Gun Rights piped in and is like, do it. And that no vote explanation went for like about a half an hour. And at first I'm like, oh boy, this is it. They're going to do a filibuster. And then I started to get discouraged because first, I think it was Jim Runstead first, and then Jeremy Moss, I think first, and then Runstead, then someone else. I think it was Hoyting. I made a comment about, I'll keep my remarks brief. But it turns out you guys were just playing games, because what they were doing, it looked like what you were actually doing was preventing them from gaveling you down. In fact, I've got a few clips here. I think I want to start with this one, because I don't have the one when you kind of started things off, but there was this moment, and this was at, I think, 4:00 in the morning, when I think everything kicked into high gear. Here we go. Here's the clip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I request that House Bill 4173 be read in its entirety.
Secretary will read.
House Bill 4173 as passed by the House June 14, 2023. Substitute H5. A bill to amend 1927 PA 175 entitled the Code of Criminal Procedure, MCLs 760.1 to 777.69 by adding section 34A to chapter 9.
So that was when the Senate clerk suddenly became an unwilling participant in your filibuster. Because every bill from there out, you made them read in its entirety. Dan Lars kept coming up saying, read it all, exercising the constitutional right to make you read it all. And boy, you could hear from that pregnant pause when they realized what was happening, how bad it was about to be.
Well, look,
Yeah,
man.
and you're right, Adam. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
I
You had a comment
mean, it's
first.
like watching a football game, and you can't get mad when the guy kneels down and let the clock run out. It's part of the rules. And oh, by the way, you don't have to worry about it when you're passing bills in, I don't know, under normal order that everyone's read, because no one asks for it.
Yeah. There's a few, and so there was like lots of no vote explanations, lots of speeches in opposition, and some of it was just brilliant. In fact, I've got this is a short one from you, Senator. This is one of my favorites of the night. Here we go. This is here we go. We'll watch the clip.
This bill would prohibit an individual from serving on the Board of State Canvassers or Board of County Canvassers if they have been convicted of certain election crimes. I think we all know in Michigan that our Secretary of State is someone who has violated many election laws. And so I urge a no vote on this, partly in sympathy for her, because 2 years from now, when she is unemployed, she may be looking for a job on a board of canvassers or something like that. And I think we should show a little bit of charity and not try to cut off that opportunity. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Not bad for being 24 hours into the session, Senator.
Okay, best part, she was on the floor, which she never comes down to. Jocelyn Benson was on the Senate floor, which is why I was like, that one was not prepared for me, but I was like, let's go do it. She's over there, and have some fun with it. I didn't have most of my speeches by that point, I didn't have a plan for what bill was coming up or anything. It's just go say something at the mic. And but she was down on the floor. And now, to be honest, if somebody looked at the camera, what you'd see is she left right before I went up to the microphone. So I like barely missed her hearing this in person on the floor, but she was standing there right before that.
That's great. I'm sure she heard about when she got back to her office or her house or wherever. This is a kind of a longer clip, but it's worth it because it's funny. And remember, this is the slow motion. This is the Chinese water torture you put the Democrats through for hour after hour after hour. There's about a 3.5 minute clip, but here we go.
The advocates of this legislation pointed out over and over that one of the primary reasons we need to pass these bills is because time has elapsed from the last time that we updated these provisions, and we are out of date. We're not keeping up with the times. We're not adopting provisions as quickly as we should. So in that spirit, I want to talk a little bit about some of the background that built the foundation for our provisions here in Michigan regarding debts, collections, etc. Of course, the practice of wage garnishment itself has deep historical roots, stretching back to ancient and medieval civilizations. Although specific legal mechanisms and terminology may have evolved over time, the fundamental concept of seizing a portion of a debtor's income or labor to satisfy debts can be traced to early legal systems in both the ancient and medieval worlds. These practices were often harsh, but they laid the groundwork for modern systems, including the one right here in Michigan, the one that we're debating today. And of course, those systems from the very beginning were designed trying to strike a balance between the interest of creditors and debtors. In the ancient world, like today, debt was a common issue, And those who were unable to pay their debts often face severe consequences, including forced labor, loss of property, or even slavery. These early systems of debt collection often did not distinguish between personal and financial punishment, and the legal structures governing debt were primarily designed to protect creditors rather than provide debtor relief. And I will say, as we look at the legislation before us today, we've come a long way, and there is an appropriate amount of focus being placed on the other side of the scales, relief for debtors. Some examples that I was able to find in my research on this, one of the earliest and most famous.
Point of order has been called. The president recognizes the majority floor leaders. Senator Singh.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The speaker needs to keep to the content of the bill.
The speaker will please note that you have to keep to the content of the policies of the bill and not veer off track. President recognizes Senator Lindsey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am absolutely striving, and I appreciate that from the floor leader. I just feel it's absolutely essential to talk about some of the foundational historical components of this dynamic of debt relief in order for us to have a meaningful discussion about this weighty policy that has come before this body today. So I won't dwell on those historical comments too much, but if I may be indulged to just provide a few. One of the earliest and most famous examples of debt laws comes from ancient.
Point of order has been recognized, and the president recognizes Majority Floor Leader Singh.
Thank you. The speaker continues not to speak to the content of the bill.
We are not going to indulge any more stories. Sorry, we're moving on. President recognizes the Minority Floor Leader, Senator Singh.
I hope when you guys are in the majority, you treat them the exact same way they treated you.
Yeah, good point, Adam, because what's going on here for your listeners who don't know that if we had a strict filibuster rule where a senator just has an absolute right to go up and talk, there were a bunch of times throughout these last 2 years where I just never would have left the podium, right? The problem is what we have in Michigan is some constitutional protections on the Senate side in particular for a right to protest a bill and to give our explanation and have that read into the journal. And so what you see the balance going on there is the folks in majority and who have the gavel up front do have the ability to challenge whether we're staying relevant, and they're being extremely strict compared to what Republicans did in the past. Republicans generally treated it like, if you want to go tell us whatever analogy or metaphor or whatever or historical examples, we're going to let you talk about it. They shut me down on that speech. I'm so sad. I was so close to talking about the Code of Hammurabi and going through how garnishment worked in the Roman system versus the Greek system. I had a 60-page speech ready on that one, so it's unfortunately
Yeah, I think it was like 45 minutes later, you were like, I still haven't gotten to explain why the trial of Socrates is relevant here, but.
Well, that was a different one, right? The trial of Socrates had to do with reforming some criminal laws and what do we do in a society when someone's tried unjustly? But that one also got gavelled down. But they just weren't hearing that. And, frankly, I think they were doing a disservice to themselves as well, because you touched on this earlier. This ended up being not just out the gate, full-scale assault. It was more tactical. The first bill I read in on peer-to-peer car sharing was testing the waters. It was a shot across the bow. It was saying, we have some tools here we can use. And we were testing what they were going to allow and, frankly, whether they were going to outright violate the Constitution. Because, for instance, if they had gavelled me down while I was reading a bill, there's no real justification for that. The law says we have a right to protest it, that you couldn't say that it's not on topic. So instead, they were comfortable having us read through the language of bills instead of hearing what I think would have been a very interesting speech about, the history of wage garnishment. But they preferred to hear, these bills be read in their entirety. So we went that route.
Yeah, bore them to death. That's fine with me. Although there was, it's funny because I was texting Senator Runstead. He's like, they always gavel me down. They never let me speak. They treat me worse than anybody. But I did see he got in some fire, and I'm playing a little bit clip from that. This is one I was shocked they didn't gavel this down, but here we go. Actually, going to take a second to upload it. Here we go.
Worsen the financial pressures on property owners already struggling to afford their homes amid skyrocketing costs. Higher taxes will drive businesses and residents out of Oakland County and the region, undermining economic stability and growth. The Democrat machine proponents of this bill will have the backing of the massive, aggressive, multi-million-dollar advertising campaigns funded by the Detroit stakeholders, the billionaires, and all these vendors who stand to benefit financially. The public, as always, with these big multi-billion-dollar tax projects will be subjected to relentless advertising barrage with little to no resources available for the opposing point of view to reach the voters. This is how the Democrats deceive the taxpayers every time in southeastern Michigan. Detroit already suffers from some of the highest tax rates in the nation. Property taxes are exploding in both Wayne and Oakland counties, creating an unsustainable financial environment. Continued tax increases will accelerate the exodus of businesses and residents, potentially plunging Detroit into another financial crisis akin to its bankruptcy, with southeastern Michigan following suit with all of these taxes the Democrats just keep pouring in on us. This bill is just another attempt to drain Oakland County's property owners of the hard-earned resources. It disproportionately benefits Detroit and a handful of municipalities while inflicting long-term financial harm on the majority of Oakland County residents and businesses. We must stand against this harmful legislation and expose the deceitful, well-funded Democrat propaganda machine that will attempt to convince voters that it is their interest. Protect taxpayers, reject this bill, and stop the exploitation of Oakland County property owners. Thank you. I'd like my comments printed in the Journal.
Without objection, so ordered. The president.
Yeah, there's some fire from Senator Runstead right there. Look, hopefully we get Senator Lindsey back. He must be having internet issues again.
It's important to note that Jim Runstead does not talk like that normally. He talks at a normal pace. He was purposely slowing himself down, I'm sure, which is fabulous. I think this is just wonderful. And it's a great service. Look, it's a great service. Whether this senator or representative is in your district or in another district, people who are watching this show should thank them. Because they stood up for something. The ones that walked out and deprived a quorum, that was a great call. The people that spent 30 hours, that wasn't 30 hours of them passing bills. It was 30 hours of the Senate majority trying to fight through all of this and hoping that our Republicans would give up, and they didn't.
Yeah,
Can I add to that, Adam?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Here's the comment that that's probably the most important point that I can think can be made right now. And I've been out messaging everybody I know. I come a lot more from the sort of grassroots, fight the system side of the Republican Party. And in our world, it's very easy and it's very common to go out. And I frankly believe it's often justified to go out and criticize Republican elected officials, right? But I think we've got to be equally diligent when something really good happens to go out there and say, I mean, we take feedback, right? And we're humans like anybody else. If you want Republicans to fight the Democrats more, then when the Republicans stand up and fight the Democrats, don't be scared to give them a pat on the back, even if you've been mad at those people before. And next month, if they go out and they do something you disagree with, stay honest with yourself and say that too. But this moment right now, I mean, I'm out there openly saying, I've been one of the people in my caucus who struggled a lot. I challenged people, constantly to say, we can fight more, we can fight more, we can fight more. This last week, we could not have fought more. Our leadership said, and they came and they asked us and they did a consensus. They said, what do you guys want to do? I was the first one to jump in and say, I want to fight. I would like us to fight. Can we please fight? The leadership said, is everybody ready for this? And everybody did. Everybody locked in. People who might not have agreed with the strategy, but it wasn't any one person. I was speaking a lot. Senator Thomas Albert was speaking a lot. Jim Runstead, Eric Nesbitt himself went to the mic more than any time I've ever seen him before. People need to understand, if you're a grassroots person out there who's been frustrated with Republican politicians and you say, I want them to fight, I want them to stop making deals, there was no deal on the table. I talked to Eric and I said, well, are you even talking to him? No, I won't say what he said, but no, we're fighting them is what we're doing right now. We're not talking to them. We're fighting them. And so, this is critical. And I think people right now, if you want it to happen more, reach out to these people and thank them. Say, this is what we have been dying for. Fight the Democrats, fight them, fight their policies. So sorry if I overdid that, Adam, but I think it's important. I think we've all got to stay honest with ourselves. You don't have to change sides and be like, I'm, always now going to be a fan of every person who was involved in that. Right now is the right time to praise. And then if you've got, valid criticism in the future, bring those.
No, I will. That was not too much. And in fact, I'll say even more on that. I am someone who believes axiomatically that if you don't have anything nasty to say about a politician, don't say anything. Because the first time you say something nice to them, they're going to take it to the bank and throw that back out there time and again. But this was an instance of real leadership. And I've been very harshly critical of Matt Hall in the past. I've not been so critical of Nesbitt in a long time. But back in the day, when I first got to Lansing, I was working for Gary Glenn on the Energy Committee. Nesbitt was chair. He was doing a lot of things for the utility monopolies we didn't like. And Gary in particular was throwing bomb after bomb at him. But there is no question that what they did this past week was outstanding and took a lot of courage and a lot of sacrifice. Matt Hall could have cut some kind of deal. I bet he would have liked to, but he didn't. They chose to fight. And again, they could have broken the strike after day one. They could have taken some kind of deal with Whitmer, and they didn't. They never did. They held the line all the way through. And that is praiseworthy, if anything is. And same in the Senate. And as you said, Nesbitt was their speechifying too. He was in the fray himself. And I think, especially because of the fact that the Republicans took back the House, the Democrats have realized now that they might even have some payback coming. And I hope especially in the House that the Democrats are punished, where, they gave Republicans in some cases no committee assignments. Like that should be thrown right back at them. All the leadership should get no committee, or be perfect. Be absolutely perfect, because they also passed a resolution to censure Josh Shriver. They should make Josh Shriver chair of government ops and put all the former House leadership on that committee under him. That'd be hilarious. But they're probably not going to do that. But we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do.
There's an old adage, not adage. It was from Jimmy Johnson. He was trying to move the Dallas Cowboys from where they were to the championship team they become, and he got his offensive line together and basically told them, "Look, guys, you don't need to like each other. You need to work together for a common goal." And from people who more on the grassroots side or more on the whatever we call establishment side, we have to figure out a way to work together. Okay. And you work together when you have this obvious goal, right? Which they did. They were 2 for 2. The House was 1 for 1 and the Senate was 1 for 1. They worked towards a goal. And that was a great demonstration of what can be done when we put that kind of stuff that we've been dealing with for a while aside. Let's focus on a goal. We got a goal here. And the goal in the Senate was, I didn't know, Senator, you had so many great term papers from college that you still kept, that you just were reading from. But I mean, that's like, did he write that in college, or Hammurabi on collection of debt? I think he did. But yeah, it's phenomenal. And we gotta figure out how to do this on a repeat basis, because this gets results.
Yeah. I think also, it might not be the biggest deal in the world, but some of the disrespectful things, the breaches of decorum the Democrats did were worth at least mentioning. So first there was this. There is the Nesbitt bingo game the Democrats were playing, which they actually put in the record. I forget who it was, but somebody came and said, I just wanted to say bingo. Like at the end, I forget who it was. But they actually put this into the journal. This is their Nesbitt bingo card. Oh, aren't they funny? Aren't they cute? Although this is actually a really great summary of the lame duck session right here. 11th hour. Here we are again. Deep sigh. Well, no committee, no debate. Unelected bureaucrats. Cover of darkness. It is now blank a.m. in the morning. Went to p.m. While the people of Michigan sleep. Wee hour. Partisan legislature. A week before Christmas. Yes, that was part of the plan too. Special interest giveaway. Discharge from committee. Return to the lost decade. Could have been bipartisan. Ramming down our throats. Far-left agenda. New green scam. Holiday season. Lansing Democrats. Corporate giveaway. No hearings. Democrat majority. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. This is the lame duck session.
Kind of, Adam. What do they what do the kids call it? A self-own, right? They think they're being
Yeah.
clever, but like, yeah, like yes, he says these words because they're true, and you're doing awful things, right? So it's not
Yeah.
that funny for you guys.
Yeah, when we play political debate bingo, it's because we're showing how predictable the whole thing is. But this is just like them rattling off all the things they're actually doing and how ridiculous it is. It's quite silly. Another thing. Go ahead.
What I think was great is that this is now being conducted in the era of free Twitter. Okay, so this stuff is happening, and it is being live streamed, and it is being live commented on, and everybody who has the intention of paying attention to this stuff is going, "What's going on?" And that spun out of control, and that story has now gone to all traditional sources. MLL had a big, publication in the Free Press. He threw barbs at Republicans. He always does. He's another good guy, but it made the Democrats look stupid. So now they're going to walk back to their constituents and say, "I can get you this." No, they can't.
Yeah. It's hilarious. Yeah, Patty says Democrats always tell on themselves. All right, I got another short clip. This is a strange moment. This is where this goes to my comments earlier about decorum. This is when Garland Gilchrist broke a tie. Let me play the clip. This is at like 11 a.m. or something the next day. It's going to take a second. They're closing the board now. They got 3 seconds to go. The vote is 19-19 for some reason. Hertel is voting with the Republicans. Never seen that before, but there it is. And here's what happens. Some typing going on.
Mr. President, there are 19 aye votes, 19 no votes, and 0 excuse. How does the president vote?
The president votes nay.
Hear those awes? Ha 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 ha! Isn't that funny? So a couple of things to this point. So first off, Garland Gilchrist is in the chair. He's not wearing a tie. Now, we've seen some Republicans not wearing ties. I'll forgive them because they were there overnight. Garland Gilchrist was not. He went home and came back and is now in the last day of the Senate session, presiding over the Senate, not wearing a tie, which is disrespectful to the chamber. But I think the bigger question I have is it Senator? He's been presiding over the Senate for like these past 2 years, which to me, like, that's such a weird thing. Like, that'd be like if Kamala Harris was presiding over the U.S. Senate. She doesn't get a vote except to break ties, which almost never happens. Like, doesn't Whitmer think he's got a job to do as lieutenant governor? He should be doing all the things that she doesn't have time to do in governing. And he spends the entire time just sitting in the chair pretending he's like running the Senate or something.
Yeah, apparently not, because you're right. And I've asked a few people about it. I'm not a long time, any of your listeners who don't know, it's my first term and I didn't serve in the House or anything before. But just asking around, it's been quite different than even some, past sessions as far as his involvement in the Senate there. And I guess you're right. I mean, I like sometimes I wonder, is he told he has to go there as like a punishment or something because you're not allowed to go somewhere else and do other things. I don't know, Adam.
Well, we know from experience, Democrats and executives like to put people dumber and weaker in charge below them as like insurance, right? So Barack Obama had to put Joe Biden as his VP. Biden had to put Kamala Harris as a VP. Kamala Harris had to put Tim Walz as their VP. Maybe there's something to that. Like, she doesn't want him to be too uppity or something. But it seems just so weird. Maybe he wants to be there. It's just bizarre. Just to spend hour after hour, day after day, just banging the gavel, having no vote in the Senate anyway. It just seems strange. So there was that. What else do we have? There's another funny clip I saw here. And by the way, of course, I know the term uppity is derogatory, but my point being that Gretchen Whitmer was the one making it. Because that seems to be that seems to be
John Cherry sleeping.
Huh?
Do you have John Cherry sleeping? Senator Cherry sleeping?
I don't have John Cherry sleeping. I do have here's a funny moment. This was when Joe Bellino had some kind of no vote explanation on something, and then Jeremy Moss makes a little snipe at him. Here's that.
Basic needs during financial hardship. HB
4900 and 4901 go way too far in protecting assets without requiring debt repayment. A more balanced approach is needed to ensure more debtors and creditors are treated fairly. For these reasons, I cannot support this legislation. I would like my remarks printed in the journal, please.
Oh shoot, did I cut it off? You know, I think I hit stop. And then the next thing is, I think Ruth Johnson comes up and says, "I want someone else's no vote explanation put in the journal as mine too." And he says, "Okay, I'll do that." Sorry, Senator Bellino, like as if to imply like she was choosing the other person's no explanation over his. It was just obnoxious. Yeah, Patty says, "Joe, babe." Yeah, and also says Democrats always tell on themselves. Allison wants me to play the Socrates clip. I don't have it handy, Allison. I'm sorry, but it was very good.
In the chat, I put the picture the senator was referring to, and then a modification of the picture by the great Patriot Post girl, the best conservative maker. I put those both in the private chat.
Okay, I'm looking up right now. So yeah, here's the clip. There's John Cherry asleep, disrespecting the process, and then of course there's the Photoshop clip right there.
She's amazing. She's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Follow Heather Dow on X, Patriot Post girl, if you haven't already done that. Her Photoshop work is top notch. So
great.
Anyway.
Can I do a Senator Cherry story real quick?
Yes, please. Oh, there was another moment. Can I tell you one story I saw real quick? Was it? Yeah. Oh, maybe it was your story. Was it you wanted to tell about the gun bill? Go ahead. You tell it.
Yeah. Well, so we've got last year. A lot of your listeners will know that they passed Airfinger's quote safe storage, or we call it lock up your storage bills, dictating how you store your firearms at home, right? So this year, the follow up to that is they want to pass a bill, and unfortunately they did pass it. The layers of this are wild. The Department of Health and Human Services is first going to come up with a plan for a flyer or a set of information that they're going to then pass to the Department of Education. The Department of Education then is going to pass it to all of the school districts, and they have to give it to, I think it's all the parents is who they have to give it to. What is the flyer? The flyer is explaining to people safe storage of firearms in compliance with the safe, the lock up your storage laws, right? And so, of course, this is an anti-Second Amendment thing. I actually, frankly, think, this one, a lot of people passed over, but it's deeply concerning because this also involves sort of like, this is like state propaganda about a topic that's protected in the Constitution. So this isn't just whether you want to debate the safety or whatever. This is that it gives them sort of a blank check to go in. Who knows what's going to be on those flyers, right? The top line on them might be, point number one, owning a firearm in itself is a dangerous activity. Be advised, right? And then they might go into the safe storage stuff. So, but a lot of people got up and spoke about that sort of content. And I was going to do the same, but I said it's going to be boring. So I got up and made a different point, which is I looked at the bill and I said, it mandates that the flyer has to be in English, Spanish, and Arabic. And so I got up and I said, I don't know how many people, spent much time in Arabic-speaking communities, talk to them about some of their life experiences, especially kind of like post 9/11. But is it really wise for the state to be sending messages to these families in Arabic, sort of softly implying like, do you have any firearms in your house? What are you doing with your firearms, right? And I think this is sort of could be interpreted as, kind of a callback to the see something, say something. We're implying that certain people, because of their, the language they speak, are more dangerous, and they might have guns, and they might be more of a risk to society.
Their bill is to encourage snitching.
What's that?
Their bill is to encourage snitching.
Yeah, they are, and I think especially, I spent time downrange in the Army, and it is the case that there's a heightened sensitivity a lot of times if you've had the United States bomb your country for 20 years straight to say like, oh my gosh, when they come and start asking us, do you have any firearms? That's not a good, place to be in. So I made that point, and then Senator Cherry jumps up, much to the surprise of the entire chamber, and says, as an Arab American, I'm deeply offended by the comments that were just made. And we were all just like, okay, I don't even know how that's offensive, but I don't think many people were tracking either that
No, I think
that he's Arab American. It was new information to me, but good
yeah,
for him.
I think he's probably about as Arab as I'm Italian, but but Democrats just like to throw that righteous indignation whenever they think they've got the opportunity.
And as an example of the performative politics that you saw in that particular one, my state senator, Daniel Polanyi, stood up a picture of this woman who had been shot at Michigan State. However, this law talks about child storage. The Michigan State shooter was not a child. The Michigan State shooter, and if you want to look back at it and look at Charlie LaDuff's very good reporting on this, was a textbook example of someone who should have been in jail but wasn't because of prosecutorial, we don't want to touch it. This is a gentleman, and all of us know this rule. He was shooting his gun out of his house into his backyard. That's not allowed anywhere. So she was using as an example something completely ridiculous, while her party is took no action to, I don't know, investigate the activities of the Oxford School District and how it led to the deaths of 4 children. So we're not actually doing what could help solve problems like that. We're doing imaginary things like sending flyers. So my comment to Senator Polanyi was, is the flyer that you're sending out bulletproof? Maybe that might help.
Yeah. It sucks because in Oakland County, the prosecutor went after the parents of the shooter, charging them with, I think it was either manslaughter, if not actual murder. I think it was manslaughter. But not the school. Not the school, which was, in better position to know that the kid was a threat. But they all just completely escape blame. They always protect their own. The government does. Speaking of guns, by the way, lots and lots of bills got defeated these past few days, including the ghost gun bill, including the bump stock ban, including Rosemary Bayer's bill to create a blacklist of people who are not allowed to buy guns. But there were a few anti-gun bills that did get through. I want to draw people's attention to a couple of these. This is a short package. This was on I guess it was Friday. So, Senator, you were part of this vote. You saw when this happened. There was a series of these 3 bills that passed the House and now the Senate to ban law enforcement from selling guns that either they take from criminal investigations or that they buy with taxpayer money in government gun buy-ups. And in fact, that particular bill, House Bill 6144, actually says the government is required by law to destroy any firearms that they acquire in a buy-up. So they're literally spending tax dollars to turn assets into garbage. Which, by the way, folks, if you ever do hear about a government gun buy-up, go to one and buy the guns from people before they get there. That's what you should do is, save the guns from the smelter. You'll probably give them a better deal than the government will. But these are bills that, again, perfectly assailable to people that anyone who ever claims the government doesn't have enough money can now come back and say, you guys the Democrats, all Democrats, no Republicans, every Democrat and no Republicans just passed a law to literally destroy perfectly sellable government property. I mean, that's all that is, really. Because the government can make money selling assets that they now can't, because it's passed a law to prohibit that from being from being captured financially. Sorry, go ahead.
Not only that, Adam, but in my speech on that particular, it's fun when we go through these. I had a speech on almost everything, but on that point, it was, how often do you hear from the left when they're trying to moderate in general elections and win? Oh, we're not anti-gun. We're just, we want to stop violence or whatever. I said, you could not have a more crystal clear demonstration of the fact that you are, in fact, anti-gun. Because you could take these, even if you believe the buyback's a good program. I don't think we should be doing that as a government. But if you think it's a good idea, there are a multitude of things. Like you said, you could, in some ways salvage assets from them. Other people pointed out that in some rare cases we've had, actually I don't know how rare they are, but we've had law enforcement agencies asking to use these for training purposes, for other, there may be reasons that they can make use of these firearms that have been taken. And the answer for the Democrats is that You basically need to take these weapons, smelt them down. The bill doesn't just say that the weapon has to be destroyed. It's after it's destroyed, they have to check and make sure that all the components were destroyed. And I'm up there, I'm like, what do you got to do? You got to find like like some quantum masher and break it down to its constituent, molecular base, and then they'll be satisfied. You couldn't make it more clear that you're anti-gun. They literally have to be destroyed. So it was a terrible set. And
even
I
like
do think, by the way,
even the most ordinary hunting rifle, flintlock rifle, whatever, completely. Yeah, that's exactly right. By the way, Heather Dow, who must have heard us talking about her fine artwork on the show,
hey Heather,
says what will be in these anti-gun flyers being sent home to school children? Good question. It's kind of vague. These bills did also pass both chambers, by the way, and this is what the bill says. So it's quite vague and therefore open to interpretation. The department shall develop, I guess we'll develop the content of it. Let's see here what it says. The informational notice. Under section 113A. Well, this is very vague. It's probably, this is, oh wait, hold on. 5450 is probably what's in reference to. So you probably have to look at House Bill 5450, I guess, to find it. And that will be, I guess the materials will be like describing this law, the safe storage law, I suppose. Is that what this is?
That was the
overview of the requirements to obey the law, I suppose. Guidance on where a parent or guardian contain gun locks and gun safes, et cetera, et cetera. But, of course, all these things open to department interpretation. So,
well, and again, it's going to have, as the senator refers to, it's going to have pictures of, crying parents, and it's going to have all kinds of craziness. It's propaganda. So we've passed a propaganda law. That's great. Congratulations, everybody. Great work.
Yeah. And Heather, because you're asking the question, if you weren't in here when we were talking about it before, I mean, I think it's totally open that they could just have the header of the flyer that comes home is, just attention. Always remember that owning or possessing a firearm itself is a dangerous activity that you should not participate in, right? Like that could be the lead off, and then they could go into what is their version of safe storage. But it's government propaganda, as Matt said.
Yeah. On Rumble, Tammy says that was my senator, and he was a great representative as well. I'm not sure who she's referring to, because that would not be you, Senator, since you were not a representative. But that was from, I don't know when that was from. So sorry for not getting that comment in on a more timely basis. But someone has a fine senator and representative. Maybe he's talking about Runstead or Eric Nesbitt. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know if there's too much else to cover tonight, although I do have something to use in closing. But apart from that, first of all, just to again say that this was an absolutely hysterical outcome. That was, I think, a combination of three things. One was the courage of House and Senate leadership and the members that went along with it, and not one of whom broke the strike or buckled in the House. And with very few exceptions, very few yes votes in the Senate in those past few days, or those past couple of nights. And so almost all these bills are now also completely partisan. And that's just the damage the Democrats have done to themselves. This has humiliated Gretchen Whitmer. This has destroyed Joe Tate's hope of running for mayor of Detroit. This is fodder for us to use for the next 2 years. The roll calls on these bills that are going to be dead anyway, but still we have roll calls in one chamber that can be used for the next few years. It couldn't have gone better. And I think the number one takeaway is that from day one, Democrats thought with just a 1-seat majority in the House and the Senate, they could do what Republicans would never be able to do with a 1-seat majority, as we're seeing in the U.S. House, that is, which is that they would just be one iron fist, and that they were going to govern with one iron fist. And it turned out iron's brittle, and it just took one Democrat to say, I've had enough, and the whole thing just fell apart. It all blew up in their faces, and we couldn't have a better outcome. We will still have to be vigilant for the New Year's, but all things considered, Tammy says Runstead was the senator she's referring to. Yeah, Jim's awesome.
Well, there's one more thing that's going out that's out there.
What's that?
There's constituency that got a tough lesson. So I'm a former school board member. There's something called PA 152, which limits the amount that schools can pay for gold-plated health insurance that some districts offer. What they rammed through was a change to PA 152, which changed the cap into a floor. But they were promised that it would come along with what? Money to pay for it. And that wasn't included. So all of these lobbying groups, like the Michigan Association of School Boards, who said, we're supportive of this, asterisk, as long as you give us a check to pay for all of it, they got a tough lesson. The tough lesson is the Democrats screwed you too, because they passed this rule and that law goes into effect. Healthcare insurance in school districts is on a calendar year basis. So when that law goes into effect, 90 days, it's going to revert back to Jan 1, and they're going to be picking up at minimum a 7% increase in healthcare costs, if not substantially more in this calendar year that they haven't budgeted for. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to come back to Senator Lindsey and Senator Runstead and Senator Nesbitt and Matt Hall and say, oh my gosh, we need more money to pay for this. Today's lesson is you can't trust Democrats. They screwed you. They screwed citizenry. And what made it great this weekend, they screwed each other, which was fun to watch.
Yeah. I've got one more clip to close out the show. And we'll say our final goodbyes before I end the stream. But one more clip I want to show. This is Winnie Brinks at the very end of the last Senate session signing off. And here's what she says. You'll hear something in this.
Members, I want to thank each of you for the work that you do and the way that you do it. To my fellow caucus members, I am so proud to serve alongside each and every one of you, and I really mean that. Senator Nesbitt, while we may not always agree on what should be done, what we have managed to do, mostly, is maintain decorum, encourage healthy debate, find bipartisanship where we can, and keep the bullshit to a minimum.
Yeah, keep the bullshit to a minimum. She couldn't help herself. She couldn't help but cuss. And look, I'm not opposed to cussing in general, but cussing is a verbal art, and she was reading. Like, she had to write that down. That's what I want to say. Yeah, I want to say we kept the bullshit to, like, these people were fuming. This was 30 hours of torture for the Democrats, watching all of their plans just fall apart completely. Yeah, Heather, they did really screw tipped wage workers, and it's going to be hilarious when they have to come back with a fix now, because it was left-wing organizations that put that whole thing into motion. That and the paid sick leave too. Yeah, the closing floor speech, the final speech on the final night of the session. And Dan says the voters are too fickle and will forget in 2 years. Well, it's our job to remind them, guys. And they've given us the best ammunition that we could hope to use in 2026, and we'll have to make sure that we do it. And I think, if nothing else, I think the Republican members are gonna have these clips handy too. So, I don't know. What do you guys say? You guys any final thoughts before we sign off for the evening?
I've got two for you, Adam.
Sure.
It might turn into three. One, just really quickly, because Matt's comments about the change in the 80-20 rule for the benefits kind of sparked this for me. Keep in mind that because the Senate was the only place where bills could be passed last week, the House, you talked about it, they were done, they were out. The Senate the Senate Democrats were so irresponsible that when legislation came in front of them that they knew needed technical fixes, they refused to fix it because they knew it would require, if you change it in the Senate, it has to go back to the House for a concurrence vote. So we watched them spend hours where they had already implemented technical fixes. They had taken a bill that passed from the House, they had substituted it for a new version to fix something that was wrong with it. They spent hours going back to the drafters and undoing their substitutes. Why? Because it needed to pass the Senate the exact same form it came out of the House,
And that, I believe, Matt, that was one of them that you're talking about. Was they had implementation date, problems of how this was all going to work on a timeline, but they could not take the time to fix it. So they were so irresponsible that they would go ahead and pass these bad bills or even undo things that they had already fixed in them and just shove it on the people of Michigan because that was the only option left to them instead of a responsible, well, let's try to do this in a deliberative fashion.
Actually, here, I've got a short clip I can play where Michelle Hoyning is driving that point home. Here we go.
Explanation. After 21 hours of voting, I'm sure LSB is as tired as we all are.
Legislative
But as
Services
the
Bureau.
clerks are reading the bills, it's really highlighting the typos and the errors as these bills are being crammed through. And our institution should be so much better than this. So I won't be supporting any bills filled with typos and errors, and perhaps we should be reading all of the bills at this point.
We did. We did.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Yep, excellent.
So that was just a technical point. The last thing is just a parting thought, Adam. You're trying to close out here.
Sure.
I'm going to repeat something we were talking about earlier with a little bit more context. If you go look up on Twitter or Facebook, a lot of the members are sharing this information. There are different lists, but that picture you showed of the stack the Democrats wanted to get done versus what they got done, the things that they were not able to accomplish in the backdrop is that they have trifecta control, but they've lost the House. They know this is their last chance. There should be no obstacle. They should be pursuing their agenda. These are some of the things they left on the table. $25 billion of new pension debt, driver's license for illegal aliens, garbage, water, sewer, and rain taxes, subsidies for Hollywood elites, national popular vote, ranked choice voting, eliminating charter schools, early release for violent felons, eliminating cash bonds for violent felons, prohibiting 80% of Michigan construction workers from working on public projects, making it nearly impossible to redevelop brownfields, Venezuela-style price and rent control, toll roads, billions of new corporate welfare, $10 million for tampons and boys' bathrooms, $500 tax credits for e-bikes, forced libraries to carry porn, calling prostitution commercial sex activity, doubling. The list goes on and on. These are real policies they had ready that in a normal world they would have gotten it done, but we stopped them. And so I'll bring it back to that same point I said before. There you go. You got the list. So I'll bring it back to the same point I said before. It is so rare for me to just give a full, complete, supportive endorsement praise for Republican politics because it so often doesn't meet my standard of let's go fight the Democrats. This week is the exception. Everybody in Michigan who has a Republican, you should be reaching out. You should probably be throwing $5 at them just as they pay attention to that too and say, look, this is what we want from you. We want you to fight the Democrats, to stand up for the platform, to stand up for the party, to stand strong together, united. That's what the people of Michigan want, and we're going to be better off if we have more of it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And as I said before, my praise for politicians comes rare, but Speaker-elect Matt Hall and soon to be a majority leader Eric. No, he's still minority leader, unfortunately. But Eric Nesbitt and Matt Hall really did a fantastic job holding it together, and the result has been spectacular. Obviously, there's still a lot of bad things. If you guys want to see all of the gory details, it's simple. You go to rescuemichigan.com, and then you click on that big banner that says Operation Watchdog. There's actually still some alerts that I need to take down because their time has passed, but you go to Operation Watchdog. There's these couple of tools here. There's one that says 7 days in Lansing, and that will go through all of the House and Senate bills that have gone through the other chamber. So you can see here all these Senate votes on these House bills, with very few exceptions. There was one exception. There was one, I'll look it up right now. There's one bill that the Democrats did amend, and that was, where was it?
Oh, you want to know the story on the amendment?
Yeah, it was 4605 and 4606 that they subbed out. That was, what were those bills?
I think it was effectively a budget implementation bill that we had already funded for like community safety. And what happened is those two bills were a priority for Karen Whitsett, the Democrat in the House.
Oh.
Who, Adam, you got it immediately, right? So Karen Whitsett wanted those two bills. We as Senate Republicans, a lot of us wouldn't necessarily have been quite there in those bills, but we were ready to offer support. Those were the only ones we talked about that we said, if they need our votes, we're going to help get those done. Sure enough, they were ahead of us one step. They went and substituted the bill there's two options here. There's two theories. One is they substitute it so as to go back to the House, and that's scary. Like, oh, are they indicating they will try to pull it back together? I think it more likely it was just a big middle finger to Karen Whitsett is what it was.
Yeah.
I think.
Which just makes it all the more likely that she's not going to come back on the 31st and want to do anything for them, because the senators have just literally prevented her from getting the one thing they might have negotiated with her over. Which also just goes to show you what trinkets and baubles some of these lawmakers will do, like with Dale's or in his stupid hearing aid bill or this bill. Oh yeah, bill to spend tax revenue on a public safety and violence prevention fund, which is just another bureaucracy that does nothing. Like, that's the bill that she really wanted. Oh, okay, well, whatever. But at the end of the day, all they did was triple down on bullying and threatening and make absolutely sure that they can't possibly snatch victory from the jaws of defeat on if there is to be a final day of session, which I don't think there will be. So to the very end, the Democrats did nothing more than just shoot themselves in the foot and let themselves bleed out for the last couple of days in Lansing. And it was glorious. So hats off to the Republicans. Oh, and also I should say this too. Hats off to all of you guys that sent in your phone calls and emails and petitions and things and kept the pressure on them, because sometimes that really does make all the difference. I don't know if things would have gone differently without that, but I know that, in fact, I was talking to someone who's in Lansing. They say they hear good things about me and bad things about me. And the reason why they hear bad things is because they know I make people get mad at their lawmakers, and that's what causes that. And that's it's like the late U.S. Senator Everett Dirksen would say, when I feel the heat, I see the light. And they got the fire in them to fight, and everything was great. And we end the year on a high note. We didn't even have time to talk about the U.S. congressional debacle. They might have to save that for another night or something. But we've covered a lot of topics tonight. Senator, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for coming on tonight. Matt, good to see you as well, my friend. And for all you guys watching, have a Merry Christmas with your family. Be safe, be merry, and we will have another stream probably. Well, I'm sure we will next Sunday. Probably not in the intermediary because it's Christmas, But to everyone, as always, guys, please, if you haven't already, remember hit that like button, the subscribe button. If you haven't, it certainly helps the channel. But we have a lot to be celebrative to be celebrating this Christmas, and boy, the Democrats are going to be crying in their booze buckets for Christmas, because there's November 5th, and now there was the lame duck, and even in Washington where their budget deal failed too, and the Republicans still rammed through their lean and mean budget. So it's all good times. Obviously, there's still a lot of crazy things going on in the world. We'll talk about those another time. But until then, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for all you do for liberty, and have a peaceful and Merry Christmas. And with that, I think we're going to call it a night. Have a good one, guys.